A very good evening, everyone, and welcome to the session that will bring a smile to your face. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce you to the 13th edition of the Apeejay Kolkata Literary Festival. Partnering with us for a session today is the esteemed Australian Consulate General and Apeejay Schools. I present to you the third session of today, Living It Colourful, with none other than the best-selling children's author, Andy Griffiths. Today we have with us Ms. Rowan Ainsworth, a career officer with the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and was most recently Counselor Political at the Australian Embassy at Paris. As Consulate General in Kolkata, Ms. Ainsworth is supporting Australia's expanding trade, commercial, and investment interests in the eastern and northeastern Indian states of West Bengal, Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Manipur, Meghalaya, Mizoram, Nagaland, Odisha, Sikkim, and Tripura. We are really delighted to have on board for AKLF this amazing panel with Andy and some children who will be participating from Apeejay schools and schools across India. It's an honor to have the Australian Consulate General partnering with us for this session. And without further delay, I would like to hand over the session to Ms. Rowan Ainsworth to introduce our author for the day.
Hello, it is a real pleasure to join you here at the Apeejay Kolkata Literature Festival to introduce one of Australia's most successful authors. And I particularly want to say welcome to all of the school children who are tuning in. This session is for you guys. I think 2020 and 2021 will be infamously remembered as the years disrupted by COVID-19, and that's especially true for school students. But the disease we have fought by locking down and isolating and distancing has, ironically, brought countries and people together. As our lives begin to return to normal, and that's a testament to India's COVID management and vaccine rollout, I have to say, it's important we keep our eyes on the things that matter in our nations in the long term. So I'm glad to be here to be speaking to you today about this event, albeit I am speaking virtually, but on the theme of reading and education, which is central to the Australia-India relationship and to our global futures. And so to the man himself, Andy Griffiths, one of the most successful authors Australia has ever seen. He's written 33 bestsellers, sold over 10 million copies, and won countless awards. Andy has been accused of being silly, and perhaps rather, I should say, he has been praised as being silly. The Treehouse series in particular, which we are celebrating here today, has been a runaway success for Andy, with children all over the world delighting in the wildly imaginative silliness that characterises his work. And not only silliness, a whole load of problem-solving, idea generation and inspiration. And that drags children away from the screen and back to reading actual books. And what could be a greater achievement than that? Not counting selling 10 million books, of course. So thank you, Andy. And as the mother of a daughter who grew up on Andy Griffiths, as well as Enid Blyton and Lauren Child and Dr. Seuss and more Andy Griffiths and still more Andy Griffiths, thank you for making reading fun and bringing joyful learning and comedy to my child's life. And I somehow managed to teach her not to hate Brussels sprouts, regardless of your efforts. But anyway, thank you very much, and over to you.
Thank you very much for a lovely welcome, Rowan. And you mentioned one of my favourite authors was Enid Blyton, and that's who I read growing up, because she knew how to get the adults out of the way and get the story started fast, get the kids into a dangerous, magical situation. And so that's who I kind of wanted to emulate as I became an English teacher, and a lot of the students I was teaching didn't like reading. They thought it was kind of dumb and, a bit boring, and why would you read when you can play computer games or go to the movies? And I said, why would you not read? You can have all of those things. And reading is a particular thing that I loved, and it used to just take me away. It's an escape from normal life, from logical, sensible life. You can go anywhere and think anything. And of course, Dr. Seuss was all about that too. He was another one of my favourites growing up. And it all kind of came together in the Treehouse. So what I was going to do today is take you through a little presentation which will introduce you to the Treehouse and the people behind it, because it's not just me. There is, of course, Terry Denton, who does all of the drawings, and my wife Jill, who edits the books and writes some of them as well. She does all the rhymes. I'm a very bad rhymer. She's much better than me. So yeah, it is a little team. But I'll introduce you to our Treehouse and the team, and then I'll be here to answer the questions from our six people on the panel. So yeah, let's see if I can make this technology work. And there we go. And that looks good. I'll just see if I can get that to play. There we go. Okay, so our Treehouse at the moment is up to 143 stories. We started with 13 stories, and I'll tell you how that came to happen. But 143 is the 11th book in the Treehouse series, which is a surprise to us. We never thought it would go past one book, and we never thought it would appeal to anyone outside of Australia, because we just amused ourselves, and we're obviously quite Australian and quite silly and rambunctious, and it was such a delight to understand that all of you people in India are enjoying the books, along with many, many other countries. So welcome. You are all welcome to visit our Treehouse anytime you like. We're open 25 hours a day, 8 days a week, 366 days every year, and we never go to sleep, so you can come anytime, day or night, and eat some marshmallows and popcorn with us, maybe even some Brussels sprouts. So this is, as I was saying, the 11th book, and there's 10 previous books. Now, it started, as I said, with me and Terry. You can see Terry on the left there. That's his cartoon image, wonderful illustrator. We have a publisher whose real name is Claire, but in the book we call her Mr. Big Nose. Mr. Big Nose is a very bad-tempered, very yelly, shouty kind of person who's always, "Where's our book? Where's my book?" And he's a bit like the big bad wolf in The Three Little Pigs and the Big Bad Wolf. You need someone shouting and scaring them, huffing and puffing and threatening to blow their treehouse down if we don't get our book done on time. And, of course, over on the edge there is Jill, who, as I said, we are married in real life, and she's a book editor. She spent her entire childhood, her teenagehood and her adulthood reading books non-stop. Not writing them, but just reading them. And she just became very, very good at working out when a story is working, or when a story has gone a bit off track or has become too silly. And that's something that often happens when Terry and I are writing a story. It becomes too silly. And so Jill helps us to bring it back. This is everyone in real life. Terry over on the left again, Claire, Mr. Big Nose on his left, and me in the middle with Jill. And we get together a few times a year and throw ideas around, and then we all go off and do our own little bits of the book. Now, this started, I guess, as we were growing up, with the books that we loved. And I've already mentioned how much I loved Enid Blyton. My favourite one of hers was The Magic Faraway Tree, where these three children find a tree in the forest with a little door, and they go inside and meet a variety of magical, silly, sometimes cross and not very nice people living in the tree. And they also go to magical lands at the top of the tree. And it was always exciting to go into the magical land, because you might be the land of lollipops or the land of eat everything that you can. But if the wind blew, you might get trapped in that land for a very long time before it comes back around. So in my books, there's always fantasy and adventure, but a little bit of danger too. And I think that's what makes it more exciting. So that was me, the sort of book I used to read. Hang on. There's Terry. He loved adventure stories, so things like Treasure Island. And if you've read the 26 Story Treehouse, you'll see we have a pirate called Captain Woodenhead, who not only has a wooden leg, but he has a wooden head, and he gives us a lot of trouble. But where do ideas come from? They come from books that we read as children, and also from messing around when we're together. Jill, in particular, loved Astrid Lindgren's books, Pippi Longstocking, about an independent girl, very strong girl. She does what she wants and lives in a house all by herself, strong enough to lift up a horse. And I guess that was in my mind a bit when I was creating the Jill, who lives in a little house full of animals on the other side of our forest. So, Pippi Longstocking is part of our mixture. Now, Terry and I have worked together for 25 years. So we know each other very well. We have a lot of fun when we work together. And he seems to know, I just have to describe something, he can draw it. And when he draws it, that gives me new ideas to generate stories from. And one day I was saying, we were working on a book, and it was a bad book. Everything was bad. And I said, can you make me a really bad treehouse, like with a tank full of sharks, and people will fall into the shark tank because there'll be no fence. It'll be a really bad treehouse. And there'll be a bowling alley, and bowling balls will fall out of the tree and hit people on the head. And so it was just a kind of silly joke. And I said, can you draw that? And I'll do some research. I'll get on the internet and I'll start looking at different types of trees that we might locate this treehouse in. So here's another place where ideas come from. They come from pictures and just looking and reading books about tree houses. So this was the first tree I found, a very tall tree. And I thought, that's a pretty cool tree, but is it a good tree for a treehouse? And if I was to ask you, I'm sure some of you would say, yes, that's a really impressive tree. But some of you might go, yeah, but there's not that many branches, and it's a long way to climb up to the top and a long way to fall out if you have an argument with Terry and he pushes you out of the tree. So maybe we'll just hold that one before we make a choice. And then I went looking for other trees, maybe something not quite so tall. And this is a much shorter tree. There's a lot of these trees in Western Australia. And this one, again, I think fails because it doesn't have very good branches. So I went, okay, the first one's too tall. This one's too short. What about this one? No, definitely not a butt tree. That's way too smelly to build a tree house in. You would never, ever build your tree in one of these. Sorry you had to see that. And then I came to this one, which is a beautiful Moreton Bay fig tree. It just had branches going everywhere. And I went, that's the one. It's got vines. You can swing on them. You can climb up into the tree, and that would support a multi-level treehouse. Then I started going on research to look at different types of tree houses. This is a very simple one. This is a very elaborate one, beautiful fairy tale castle with, a spiral staircase there, and the sort you might find a prince or a princess trapped in the top tower. Now, a lot of people like that, but once again, research is all about seeing all of the things that are out there before you make a decision. And I loved this one. It was like an eyeball tree house. To me, it looked like an eyeball, a giant eyeball sitting in the forest. And I thought that would be good if you wanted to spy on people. You could sit in the treehouse and spy on everyone in the forest, and no one would know you're there, except maybe for that lady and who's pointing out your secret spy treehouse. So she's your enemy and you must destroy her immediately, perhaps by firing laser beams out of the eyeball down onto her head and onto her dog too, because that's obviously part of your enemy. You see what I'm doing there? I'm making up a little story just from a single picture. That's how stories get written. You don't need much. Just sometimes a single image gives you the idea. And there was this treehouse, a very futuristic treehouse, which looked to me a lot like a spaceship. It reminded me of a spaceship, and I got the idea: wouldn't it be great if your treehouse could take off and fly up into space? And that's what gave us the idea for the 130-story treehouse, where they do go into space in their treehouse and their tree and have to fight giant flying eyeballs. But we'll get to that. While I was doing this research, Terry was, for once, working quite hard, and he came up with this initial outline for the bad treehouse that I'd asked. And I was like, wow, that's an amazing kind of multi-level structure that you've drawn there. But there's nothing that I asked for. Like, there's no sharks, there's no bowling alley, there's no marshmallow machine. And Terry said, just hang on a sec, just let me finish it off. And then I watched him as he spent the next couple of hours adding all the detail in. So you can see how Terry works, starting with a very simple outline and then adding detail. And as he added that detail, and then even then I thought that was brilliant, but he said, no, I'm not quite happy with it. I'm going to do another draft. And you can see suddenly we had the most amazing treehouse in the world. It was so good. It wasn't a bad treehouse at all. I just went, I want to live in that treehouse and I want to write books about it so I can imaginatively be in this space. You'll see the sharks are there down the bottom right-hand side. There's a see-through swimming pool for people who don't want to swim with sharks. And we'll go through a couple of the features. There's the bowling alley. And a little drama's happening on that bowling alley, because I guess another place where ideas come from is problems, like what could go wrong? And that's Terry bowling my head, apparently mistaking it for a bowling ball. I go, Terry, that's my head. And he goes, oops, sorry, Andy. I eventually get revenge on him for this, but it's taken many, many books to think up how to do it. But that's the bowling alley. There's our see-through swimming pool. Once again, Terry is standing on my head this time. Can't see where I am. We have the shark tank. And what could possibly go wrong when you're feeding the sharks? Well, I think you can pretty much see you should never turn your back on a shark, especially at feeding time. We have a secret underground laboratory, and there's a machine that can make very small things into very large things. In this case, Terry is turning a small banana into a large banana, which becomes a lot of handy in the 13-story treehouse. And that's our lemonade machine. You just lie there and get any flavour of lemonade you want delivered directly into your mouth. And our marshmallow machine that follows you around, fires marshmallows into your mouths whenever you're hungry. The only problem is getting it to stop. But that was the first book, and we wrote the book, and the big problem is, how do you write a book in a treehouse when there's so much stuff going on? And but we wrote that, and the Australian kids really, really loved it, and they said, "Can we have? We'd love another one." And I said, "Oh, okay, maybe we'll make the 14-story treehouse." And Terry said, "No, that's not enough. Let's double it." So he drew a 26-story treehouse. So you can see it keeps all the levels from the previous one and adds 13 more, including the anti-gravity chamber. That's that big white egg-like structure that you can see there. A skateboard ramp with a crocodile pit hazard, and Dodgem cars, tattoo machine, and my very favourite level of all of them, the Maze of Doom. A maze so complicated, so utterly impossible to solve, no one who's ever gone in has ever come out again. And if you don't believe me, that's what it looks like inside. And all that's left is a few penguins there who probably wander there for the rest of their lives looking for fish. So that was the 26-story treehouse. We talked about Captain Woodenhead and how the whole treehouse got built. And then all of our readers wanted another book, and we added another 13 stories. So now you can see the kind of key. It just happened to be 13 to begin with, and then we added 13, and then we added another 13. And as each book goes on, it gets sillier because, we've used a lot of good levels. And so we started putting things like volcanoes in to help us toast our marshmallows, and Elephant, the Trunkinator, who you can go into the ring with the Trunkinator, see if you can knock him out before he knocks you out. We put a trampoline in the top of the tree, and the world's most dangerous roller coaster, a roller coaster so dangerous that dead people are too scared to go on it. And that's another one of Terry's pictures that I particularly love, an impossible roller coaster. And yet the way he's drawn it makes it seem kind of real and believable. And that's what we're trying to do all the time, is even though we're in a ridiculous fantasy setting, we're really trying to make ourselves and you as the readers believe that it really, really exists. And that's part of the game of storytelling. We then added another 13 to get to book number 4, the 52-story treehouse, giant waves and ninja snails. You can see we're getting really desperate for ideas here. And then we added another 13. We got the 65-story treehouse, where we went time travelling throughout time, forwards and backwards. We saw dinosaurs. We went into the future and got ourselves a permit for the treehouse. Then there was the 78-story treehouse, which is all about making a movie of the books. And would have been good, except on the very first scene, Terry ran across the set with his pants on fire and then jumped into the shark tank, and they stopped filming me and started filming Terry and made him the star of the movie. And in fact, I got kicked out of the movie. It was a terrible, terrible experience. So that was the 78. Then we added another 13. And in this one, I thought, what if we had to look after Mr. Big Nose's grandchildren? How would children, young children, go in the treehouse, which is really quite dangerous? And so that was the subject of that book. And that's us in our submarine sandwich underneath the sea. 104, Story Treehouse. We dealt with the painful issue of toothache, because I had a lot of toothache at that time, and Terry helps me to get my teeth out, and that's us flying down Mount Everest on a rather large bird. The 117 Story Treehouse is where Terry took over the storytelling, made a story all about dots that all joined into lines. The lines joined into shapes, and then the shapes became so numerous they actually exploded the entire book. And we got into a lot of trouble from the story police at that point, because we'd gone beyond the bounds of reasonable storytelling, and they tried to arrest us and put us into prison for 1 billion years. Of course, we got out, but I'm not going to tell you how. And the 130 Story Treehouse is what I referred to before, where our tree got sucked up into the sky by a giant flying eyeball, and we had to go to the planet Eyeballia and fight 12 different aliens from different parts of the universe in an intergalactic death battle. So it was a lot of fun, but quite scary as well. Which brings us to the latest book. Now, this was written in lockdown. We've been in lockdown in Australia quite a lot, in Melbourne, where I live. And at that point, I just thought, I think we all need a holiday. So we made a camping ground level in the treehouse. And I thought, we'll go for a nice, relaxing camping holiday. What could possibly go wrong? Well, you're seeing one of the things that goes wrong there. Terry forgets to pack the tent. He forgets to pack the food. We have to go fishing, and the water gets quite rough. And pretty soon, it's not the most relaxing camping holiday at all. But it was a wonderful way to escape lockdown through both writing the book and imagining that we were far away from all of the COVID stuff. So, yeah, as I said, that's one of the things I really enjoy about writing and reading, is the opportunity to travel. Sometimes you read nonfiction, you travel to real places. Sometimes you read nonsense like this and travel to impossible places. That's a picture showing many of the characters and things that have happened over the last 11 books. And at the moment, we're writing book number 12 for later this year. So, as I said, our treehouse is open for visitors any time of the day or night, and I hope to see you all there. So I'll finish my presentation here. If I can do this complicated little thing. If I stop the share, and does that get us back out? It does. Okay.
Can we get the students participants in, please?
Good afternoon, one and all present here. I am Aruhi Bhargav of class 8, and I'm representing Apeejay School, Park Street. Mr. Griffiths, here are my questions. You usually play with words, and your book 143 Story Treehouse has a lot of nonsensical and new words which are not present in the dictionary. So, what and who had inspired you, and how did you create them?
Great question. Thank you. One of my favourite books in the whole world is Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. also through the looking glass. And he delights in making up words. There's a famous poem called The Jabberwocky, which you might know. "'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogroves, and the mome rats did outgrabe." Now, none of those words make sense, but they sound like they make sense. And so from Lewis Carroll, I learnt that you can just play with words, as we all do when we're little kids, particularly, or if you've seen little kids, they'll just make a sound, blah, 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 over and over, just for the sheer fun of it or to annoy someone. And so, yeah, when Terry and I are working, we're playing with words, we're playing with pictures, and we're playing with ideas. And we never know which ones are going to get us somewhere. A lot of them go nowhere, but it's the playfulness that gives you the ideas. So I'm really glad you picked up on the nonsensical words, especially quasgex, the stunt axolotl that Terry owns.
Right. So your books usually have certain funny and unexpected events going on, whether being torn apart in two halves or rescuing your friends with the help of an old soggy boot. So my question is, which one of the unexpected characters or events did Terry and you find the most difficult or challenging to bring to life?
I'm going to change the question slightly. Our favourite character is Professor Stupido, who in 39 Story Treehouse, we invent a writing and drawing machine to write and draw the book for us. But then it takes over the book and won't let us in the treehouse and won't let us do any work at all. So we go, I wish we hadn't invented that thing. And Terry says, I'll get the uninventor, Professor Stupido. So it was a really silly idea of how to fix a problem in a book was to uninvent something. But it amused us so much, and he did a beautiful drawing of that character. I think he's our very favourite character of all of them. And he comes in and he solves one problem. He uninvents the story machine, but then he starts uninventing everything else that annoys him, which in the end is everything. So our books often work. We solve a problem and then create a bigger problem and then create an even bigger problem trying to solve that problem. So, yeah, but all of the characters usually come pretty fast, and I don't think any have given us much trouble at all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aruhi. Can we get Atharv, please? Atharv Vijan.
Hi, sir. I am Atharv Vijan, a student from class 7th. I study in DPS Akipuram. It's a pleasure talking to you. So, I want to ask a few questions. The first one is, why did you choose fiction and humor over other genres?
Partly because I cannot write anything else. Even if I try to write seriously, the minute I start writing, there's a little mischievous voice in me, a little mischievous part that just wants to be silly. And I've always done that. When I was at school, I was writing funny things for my friends to read. And later when I grew up, I was trying to write seriously, but I just couldn't do it. And I went, I guess I'm a funny writer. But of course, when I look back at everything I love to read, there was often funny. So I think writers write very well what they love to read. And in my case, silliness. And when I met Terry, he supercharged it because we get together and make each other even sillier. So that's why it's so fun to work with him.
Okay, so my second question is, can anyone become a storyteller? What should I do to hone my art of storytelling?
Great question. I think everyone is a storyteller. You'd be very familiar that, when you go to school, you'll say, you'll never guess what happened to me on the way to school today, or what happened, last night in my house. This crazy thing happened. So we're telling stories to each other all the time. If you want to write stories, you need to practice writing them down. It's a little harder to tell a written story, because when I'm telling you a story in real life, I can see your face. I can see if you're understanding me or finding it funny or confused. But when you're writing, you can't see the reader. So it takes a little bit of practice to get that experience. So writing as much as you can is helpful. Reading your stories out to real readers to see how they react is very helpful. And I would also say read as much as you can, because you've already heard me talk about Enid Blyton and Dr. Seuss and Lewis Carroll. I borrow ideas from them all the time. And the more books you've read, the more ideas you can borrow. And so, yeah.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Good luck.
Manali Thakur.
Hello, sir. I am Manali Thakur from class 9 of Apeejay School, Salt Lake. So the first question I want to ask is that can you please give some spoilers of the new book that's coming this year with 13 new levels added to Andy and Terry's Treehouse?
Yeah, sure. It'll be called the 156 Story Treehouse, and it's an idea that came about. It's a Christmas story, basically. Andy and Terry are trying to scam Santa by getting the most presents ever by having an endlessly expandable Christmas stocking. So they're hoping to trick Santa to just keep putting toys into the stocking, but of course it all goes horribly wrong, and I cannot spoil it any more than that. But it's a Christmas story, and partly based. Once I have a daughter, and when she was little, I pretended to trick Santa. And I got into a lot of trouble the next morning because all I got was a burnt potato, and she found that so funny.
Okay, thank you, sir. I would surely like to keep an eye out for the new novels that are coming. And my next question is that how do you like to name your characters? Like, is there any specific process in which you like to name them?
Usually I try to get it pretty fast. So there's a fortune teller in one of our books called Madam Know-It-All. And so I knew I needed a fortune teller who would look in her crystal ball and be able to tell you everything about the future. And so I just thought, oh, well, she knows all. I'm Madam Know, I know all. So I went Madam Know-It-All. That helps me know who that character is. So usually pretty fast. If you have to think too long for a character's name, you can get lost in endless choice. So, the director of our movie called him Mr. Big Shot. The publisher of the books, Mr. Big Nose. So they're just very quick, cartoonish names that help me and the reader remember who they are.
Thank you, sir.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Mannat.
Good evening, sir. I'm Mannat Kohli, a student of class 7 in GD Goenka Public School from New Delhi. I would like to ask you, in your book, in the treehouse, you have lots and lots of pets like penguins, the trunkinator and all. Do you have any pets, actually?
In real life, I have one cat with one eye. She was a rescue cat, and she's a lovely cat. And what I really like is because she's only got one eye, she can't catch birds. She can only look at the birds. so she doesn't do any damage to the bird life here. But my wife, Jill, did grow up in a house with lots of animals, guinea pigs, dogs, cats, rabbits, the whole bit. And her sister used to play a mean joke on her. She'd pretend to be able to talk to the guinea pigs. And her sister said, "Oh, Jill, the guinea pig says you smell." And Jill, that would make Jill very upset. And so I said, right, well, I'm going to write this book and I'm going to give you the power to be able to talk to animals. And, because that was really mean what your sister did. So, and Terry loves drawing penguins and he draws rabbits and he just does it. I don't really understand why, but that's why there's penguins everywhere throughout the books.
Yeah. A lot of your books, they have been turned into movies. So what do you think is the best adaptation of your books? Which movie?
Well, The Treehouse hasn't been made into a movie, but there was a series called The Just Books, which was made into a cartoon called Just Andy, which was a lot of fun. And there was also a cartoon of The Day My Butt Went Psycho, with a lot of butts running around and trying to take over the world. That was very colourful and very, very silly. But look, I love movies, but for me, the book is really where it's at because it's like so personal. As you're reading the book, you're making up your own kind of, you're colouring it and you're directing your own movie in your head. So I always go back to the books. Thank you.
Thank you.
Neve.
Good morning, Mr. Andy Griffiths. I'm Neve and I study in class 3 and in Bluebell School International. And today I'll be asking you 2 questions.
Sure.
My first question is, how many more stories will the treehouse have?
That is the big question, and I honestly can't tell you. We're working on book number 12 at the moment, so 156. I think there'll be at least another one to get us to 169, and then we'll be coming up to 13 books. So we shall see, but we never, as I said, we never expected it to go beyond one book. So the fact that we've got this far is kind of amazing to us. But who knows? Maybe 13 would be a good place to stop if we can.
Okay, my second question is, when was the last time you went camping with Terry?
That would have been about 4 years ago. We used to go down to a national park called Wilson's Promontory National Park, south of Melbourne, and we would just spend a week writing and drawing together and walking in the bush, and he would pick up dead snakes, and he is a very silly man. He's as silly as his character in the books. That was about 4 years ago, but since the lockdowns and everything, we haven't been able to get together quite as much. So, but I'm sure if we did go camping again, it would be as disastrous as it is in the 143 Story Treehouse.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Tarini Kashyap. Okay. I think one of our participants has dropped out of the call. Thank you, Andy. It was a very interesting and interactive session. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone who's joined us. We'll move on to the next session after this. Thank you, Pan Macmillan, for partnering with us for this session. And thank you, Australian Consulate General and Apeejay Schools. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Great to see you all. Thanks for the great questions too. They were really cool. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone.